out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back, so let's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. Or it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get To, the baseball podcast from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher.
And welcome to Let's Get To. I'm your host, James Christopher, and we have a packed episode for you. Jeff Lantz, the communications director for minor league baseball, is here. Dr. Wesley Long from Methodist University in Houston is here to talk a little bit about COVID and what it's going to be like if we are venturing out to some ball games. Jess Knaster is here for the Minor League Mind, and we saw a little bit of live baseball last night. You also might have noticed a very new, very beautiful version of Take Me Out to the Ball Game by Grace Usselman and Katrina Tulawicki. It's sort of an a cappella thing, and Grace is such a talented young woman, and she actually does one of our recurring versions as well, the ukulele version, and we always end the show with her ukulele instrumental version of the song. So we're very excited. We want to thank Grace and Katrina for working on that for us. But we do start the show with some breaking news, and yeah, it's news that I think everybody saw coming. It's news that isn't happy. It's news that isn't good. Major League Baseball has officially canceled the minor league season. So those of you who are listening who aren't fully aware how it works, when we talk about affiliated minor league baseball or the organization MiLB, we're talking about teams that are affiliated with major league teams. And so those players are assigned by, for example, I'm wearing the Corpus Christi Hooks, which is the Astros AA affiliate. So all of the Hooks players are the ones drafted, traded for, signed by the Houston Astros. So now that we're dealing with this pandemic, and each major league team has a revolving roster of 60 players for both safety reasons and for convenience, quite frankly, they will not be sending teams down to their affiliates. So for the Astros, Round Rock won't get a team. The Hooks won't get a team. The Woodpeckers won't get a team. The River Bandits, the Valley Cats, all those teams will be without players, which means no games. And that is why you've seen teams like Round Rock pivot into playing a different kind of baseball this season. So we all kind of knew that was coming. The fact that you saw teams beginning to pivot, to find new ways to hopefully monetize their ballparks and provide a little bit of that service to the community is because, again, we all knew it was coming. It was just made official. You know, and the only way I know to feel about it is that it sucks, and it's completely understandable. This is one area where it's completely understandable. I wish they could have made the word official sooner for teams. I wish that it hadn't been dragged out and gotten to a result that we all knew was coming. But I mean, if you've been following the show, you know that that's Major League Baseball's thing. But we feel for all of these teams. We feel for these small businesses that are having to lay workers off and that are going to try to figure out how to stay in business, hoping that when we roll around to April of 2021, they can go back to some sense of normalcy, of having games and then being able to be close to capacity for the seating. And so, you know, all I can say is keep them in your thoughts, keep supporting them as best you can, keep buying gear, do whatever you can to make sure that they know that you're out there and that you care and that you're a part of this community, particularly if you live in a minor league city like I do. And if you listen to the show, it's only because you love minor league baseball. And so you know that those teams have not failed for a second to be there for you. So I hope that everybody will get through this. And it's dark, and I'm afraid that in the realm of some minor league teams, the dark days haven't passed us yet. We've still got more to go, but hopefully we can all just pull together as a community and get through this. But like I said, we have a packed show, so let's dive in.
This just in. News from minor league baseball.
So we're excited to welcome to the show, though we wish it was under better circumstances, friend of the show, Jeff Lantz, who is the Minor League Baseball's communication director. Jeff, how's it going?
Well, it's a tough morning, but, last night was not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But, I think everybody saw that result coming. It was just a matter of time probably. And, it takes the burden off a lot of our teams with the uncertainty and everything like that. So it's gives everybody a chance to start preparing for 2021 and, and try and find other ways to generate some revenue this year.
I want to go back to that then, because you're right, exactly. The writing was on the wall. The minute that they said that it was a 30-man roster with a taxi squad, which was over a month ago, that meant no affiliated minor league baseball. We're talking about a collection mostly of small businesses that are going to need to find a way to create revenue. Is that the most frustrating part at this point, that it did take them so long to actually be official with that decision?
I think everybody was holding out hope that we could still at least get in 3 months. Really a lot of our leagues, the weather, we probably, if we had to, we could play through October in most of our markets. I think, if you look at it, the temperatures in October are probably better in a lot of places than they are in April in the Midwest League and Eastern League. So, and those are our cold weather leagues really. So, there was some hope that we could play in, July, August, September, and possibly October. But, that's obviously not ideal because you're going up against high school football on Fridays, college football Saturdays, and NFL on Sunday. But, there's still, if you can draw 1,500 people on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon or Sunday, that's still better than the zero we're going to get otherwise. So there was still some hope, but, it was fleeting as the schedule got into mid-June. It was became harder and harder to envision with the lack of testing and everything that needs to be done, and just our operations model. Everybody rides buses, and it's just the hotels, switching hotels all the time. It's just logistically with the testing, it would have been almost impossible.
So I guess, and I don't even know why this next question matters, except I'm looking for any positive humanity in a world where that seems to be increasingly fleeting. Was there any sense of, man, we're really sorry to do this, but this is what's going to happen? Or was it a pretty cold decision, the way the word was delivered?
No, it was, like I said, everybody's kind of seen the writing on the wall and kind of knew it was coming. So I think everybody was emotionally prepared for the news. But obviously, you hate getting that note saying, hey, it's over for this year, because, I started thinking about the people that work at a lot of these teams, and the ones that haven't already been furloughed or laid off, they're looking, they're probably staring that as their next option for a lot of these teams. And that's difficult for everybody. Nobody wants to be laid off, obviously, and nobody wants to lay their staff members off. So it's, when we finally got the word, it was obviously not ideal, but it's unfortunately the way we had to go.
You did talk about the fact that the writing was on the wall and a lot of teams pivoted. And what I love about this organization that is minor league baseball, the affiliated MiLB, is a lot of them pivoted to still doing things community focused, drive-ins. Of course, the Round Rock Express and a couple other teams have made temporary deals with the TCL. But just explain what impact this is really going to have industry-wide, because even Round Rock now having 15, I think, TCL home games isn't going to replace the 60 they were supposed to have. So what are we looking at as far as the industry of minor league baseball? And I think in particularly teams owned not by parent companies, because I think that's a little different deal. Yeah.
The fact that we are really a collection of small businesses makes this just as hard for, our teams as it is for the corner store down the street. It's our teams have a limited number of days a year where they can make money to begin with. And those are usually pretty big days financially for our teams. And now they're replacing a crowd of 9,000 on a Friday night with fireworks, and everybody's drinking beer and eating hot dogs with a drive-in movie where everybody has to stay in their car and nobody's really drinking beer. And, you know, it's great that they can open the ballparks and do some things and let people in, but the revenues are not nearly comparable to what baseball brings in for them. You know, a lot of our teams are getting really creative. I'm sure you've seen Pensacola turn their stadium into an Airbnb.
Tried to convince my wife into going, and she said no.
Yeah, I wish I lived a little closer to Pensacola because I'd do that in a minute. But you know, our teams are staffed with an incredible number of very creative and talented people that are coming up with ideas just like that. You know, team in Reno is doing a lot of creative stuff. It's going on everywhere, really. You know, and that's great to see that, you know, they're not having to cut staff and you know, push people out the door because of financial concerns. But you know, there are teams that are doing that, and long term, you know, this hit is going to be. It's going to take a few years for our teams to recover for this. You know, the people that say you had a fence sign and a season ticket package and maybe a suite rental for a night, you know, and you spent $12,000 on that with Corpus Christi, you know, they might say, we'll give it to you next year, but then that's $12,000 that Corpus Christi won't make next year.
Right.
And, you know, it's really, you know, it's going to be a problem for our teams for probably another 2 or 3 years down the road as they're continuing to do the make goods on the things that they couldn't deliver this year. And, you know, it's just, it's going to be really hard for a lot of teams to make it without some kind of federal assistance or, you know, is the worst case scenario, probably bankruptcy filings.
You know, and assuming there'll be a major league season, and I'll be honest, I'm 50-50 on that. I still think, was it really just a matter of, you think logistically it would have been too hard, or do you think Major League Baseball didn't much care about? It seems like you could have at least kicked your practice squad players to at least your AA affiliates, which generally are smaller in league and footprint. Do you think that there was not an interest in doing that, or do you think that it really was just too hard logistically?
I think it's almost impossible logistically with all the travel these guys do. You know, you have that many guys, you can't really control them like you maybe can in the big leagues, where you keep them in these 5-star hotels where there's only so many ways out. You know, there's only so much trouble they can get into. But, you know, our guys are staying at Hampton Inns and Courtyard by Marriott's where, you know, if they really want to get out and see the town a little bit at night, they certainly can. So, and the number of tests that you would have to do, I mean, it would just, you know, and really one of the bigger problems was that, you know, say you're in a Texas league, well, whatever the state laws are in Texas might be different than what they are in Oklahoma or Arkansas as far as, you know, size of gatherings that you can have and whether or not people are being quarantined in one state or another when they come to visit. You know, Florida is a prime example. You know, if somebody comes into Florida or leaves Florida, chances are they're going to get quarantined somewhere right now, wherever they're heading. So it was just, there were just so many factors in it. You know, and I think, you know, Major League Baseball, they're with the taxi squads and extra players that they're keeping, you know, I think it makes sense to have those players as close to your Major League city as possible, whether it's your AA affiliate, your AAA affiliate, or even a Class A affiliate. You know, if they have a nice facility, you want to put your guys, you want to keep them as close as you can. So if, you know, somebody wakes up with a stiff neck and they go and get treatment at the stadium in the morning and can't make it, can't answer the bell for the day game, you can get that guy from South Bend up to Wrigley Field. So, you know, I think it makes sense for them to have their guys nearby.
You know, the thing about all of this is it's always under the dark cloud of what the changing relationship of minor league baseball and Major League Baseball is looking at, and the stories that started breaking in October with the possible contraction, things like that. And then you had almost immediately governmental political action to stop that. They obviously have bigger fish to fry. So, you know, and I'm looking at part of this, and part of me can't help but put on a tinfoil hat and say that some of the way that this has been manipulated by Major League Baseball has been to help move in that endeavor. If teams can't have a season, they might not exist, which might make contraction easier for them. I mean, where do we sit with that now? I mean, have y'all had any discussions any further?
They had some discussions back in April and kind of agreed to, let's get this season rolling before we can really start worrying about all this. But, the way I look at it is, even if the PBA weren't expiring in this September and we still had the coronavirus hit, I still don't think we play a season. For all the reasons we talked about, just the logistics of playing in today's world, it's nearly impossible.
Right.
I mean, you see MLB, the NBA, eventually the NFL and college football, they're going to have big problems getting their seasons rolling and keeping everybody healthy. And, I think that something that impacts our business model as much as the coronavirus does, and obviously with the cancellation of our season now, financially, it's going to be really hard for our teams to survive. Pat O'Connor, our president, yesterday said that he wouldn't be surprised if half of our teams had real difficulty making it through this. I'd like to think that Major League Baseball isn't using this to their advantage. I just don't see how we would have played anyways. And it just so happens that it's a PBA negotiating year, but
you're right.
It's just unfortunate all the way around. And Pawtucket won't get to have their farewell season at McCoy Stadium, and you look at Wichita and Fredericksburg and
Rocket City,
and all these places that aren't getting to open their. They had people working around the clock for months and months getting those ballparks ready for their home opener. And now they have another year to wait, and that's disappointing too. But it's really nothing we can do about it.
Right, and I think the thing that worries me is like a lot of the teams on those leaked lists were already in sort of depressed financial economic areas, and I just hope there's a way that they can find a way to survive. And I think I actually got out to watch Round Rock play their first TCL game last night, and
okay.
Did not realize how much I actually missed being in the stands of a baseball game. And so it's going to be crushing. One of the things, we've watched through the media and we've talked about on the show a bunch, how the Players Union and MLB didn't really negotiate. They just sort of yelled at each other through the media where every offer was like a non-starter. Has that been the tone of the discussions with you guys when you've had them, or has it been a bit more, we're trying to figure out how to make this work?
No, I think it's been more productive and constructive. It's they've kind of given us an idea of what they're looking for, and whether it's facilities or travel, and some realignment ideas, and we're just trying to find ways that we can make it work that will benefit our teams and theirs. But there's a lot of things to work through, and there's a lot of things that are outside of the scope of just facilities and travel. It's ticket taxes, who's going to pay for bats and balls, all those kind of things too. So there's a lot of factors involved. It's not just a geographical reset of the leagues or anything like that. There's a whole lot of business aspects to it as well. That there's a lot of bills to pay when it comes to player development, and it's been a good relationship for a long time, and hopefully we can keep that going.
I hope so too. When I read the first proposal, like some of it just didn't add up for me. Like talking about long bus rides, yet none of the teams in the Texas League were on the list, and those I think are the biggest. I mean, those guys in Midland telling me about going to Arkansas, that's a rough.
Oh man,
that's a rough bus ride, man. So I always like to end things with you when we talk about this stuff. Like, how can we help? Like, how can fans? Is it buying gear? Is it just continuing to do what we can to kind of support these teams financially?
Yeah, if there's an event at the ballpark and you feel comfortable going out and wearing the mask and take all the precautions that you'd have to, if there's an event, whether it's a TCL game in Round Rock or a drive-in movie night in Colorado Springs, get out and support the teams if you can. They're going to put on a great show for you no matter what they're doing. So whether it's concessions, some teams are just having drive-through concessions available for people that want a little ballpark fix.
Mm-hmm.
Every little bit helps, and the teams are certainly appreciative of the fan support too.
So what are you going to be doing to kind of keep, now that you've like, how are you going to keep occupied until we get rolling in 2021?
Man, that was what I started thinking about when I woke up this morning. I'm like, damn, what's next? So, it's just, you hope Major League Baseball is able to pull off their season. You have something to watch on TV at night, hopefully. I'll miss the game as much as anybody in the minor league level, and it's very disappointing for everybody, I think. But I guess now I don't have any excuses to not get in a little better shape and fix my golf game.
All right, so we are welcoming to Let's Get To again. We talked to you in real time, Dr. Long, 3 months ago in COVID time, somewhere around 18 years ago. We spoke. Real quick, can you tell everybody your resume real quick, because it's long and I always got it confused.
Sure. So I'm a MD PhD clinical pathologist. I'm board certified in clinical microbiology, and medical director of diagnostic microbiology here at Houston Methodist, and also, and now soon to be officially tomorrow, I'll be associate professor of pathology and genomic medicine here at the hospital as well. So that's the short bullet resume there.
I really wish they would have given me such cool words to say with my film degree. And it just usually means, do you want to be a barista? All jokes aside. So tell me something. So, you and I spoke about this. You were on our show again 3 months ago, very frank, very open. It seems like, I had this idea when we were going into this, and you were very upfront about how serious it would be, that I kind of thought we would have this rally around the flag. We are going to war. And instead, everything that's bad about our culture right now has devolved into misinformation about this virus. Thoughts on that?
So I do think that, I think basically what happened was, for several months, for March and April, we had lockdown orders and stay-at-home orders, and everybody rallied around that concept and staying at home, and clap for the healthcare workers, and we saw some of the seriousness in areas like New York City and some things on the news and what was possible, and we were kind of on the trajectory with the infection at that point, that in very early March it looked like it could be quite bad, but because we did all of those things very rapidly, and everybody was very compliant and very on board, we did a really good job of really halting a lot of the spread of the virus. And it was hard. It was very hard work. Hard on people, hard on families, hard on kids. But we were very successful. And so I think, unfortunately, because we were so successful, going into sort of May, there was, fatigue from all those measures. There was the phenomenon of, if you didn't know someone personally who was affected or had a bad case, or if you know somebody who had a very mild case, the sort of thing where you hear people say, well, I didn't know anybody that had it, or I don't, and certainly in a lot of smaller, more rural areas, less dense populations, there weren't a lot of cases typically. And so in any case, I think all of those things kind of combined in May to this sort of, there was, fatigue and a desire to, get out and about. And I think that, coupled with states starting to reopen, starting to let businesses operate again and do things again, that, at first everybody was like, okay, we have to wear a mask, whatever. But sort of all those things combined into May, just kind of general fatigue of, well, it's over. Like, we did it. We flattened the curve. We're good. And I think what most of us in healthcare kept trying to message was like, hey, this virus is still out there. It's still circulating. We're still diagnosing people with it every day. But, that kind of got lost in the noise of, now school's just canceled and we're out. And then that, sort of fed into Memorial Day. And then Memorial Day was sort of like, it's the start of summer, we're out of school. And I think a lot of people at Memorial Day just wanted to sort of take that collective sigh of, and release of all this pent-up energy. But the unfortunate thing, I think, at that point, at least in Houston, if you look at our numbers, they had really already started to go up, really all the way back into mid-May. The numbers have started to really slowly trend back upwards. And so then you get into Memorial Day and, summer and everything, people, things reopening. And then nobody's wearing masks, nobody's worried about social distancing anymore. And that's led to us then now getting to where we are with this really rapid rise in cases. So I really think that's kind of how we got to where we are right now.
So where do you think we need to go next as far as, flattening the curve again? I mean, it's a word, I guess a phrase we're still using. I don't know that the governor is going to take us back because he's still a politician who's going to need to run for re-election someday. Where do you think we're going to need to go?
So I think by and large, what we really need to do is barring any political action, shutdown orders, et cetera, is that people need to basically practice all the things we've learned, all the things we learned in March and April, all the good habits. The hand washing is critical. Wearing a mask or a face covering in public, minimizing your trips out into public again. So trying to go to the store every day, trying not to go to, these crowded places every day. Don't go to crowded places, period. Avoiding unnecessary social gatherings, avoiding unnecessarily crowded places, basically hunkering down at home as much as you can. And when you do go out, wearing a mask, having the hand sanitizer, washing your hands, all of those things are important. And then if you are sick, staying home. If you've been exposed to someone who tests positive, quarantining yourself at home until you test negative or symptom free, for a long enough period. It's all that, all those things are really important. I think we've had a little bit of help now with some of the mask orders and things have been reissued, because so much of wearing a mask is almost peer pressure. If you walk into a store, I experienced this a couple of weeks ago when I went camping. I was in kind of a small town, a couple hours outside Houston, whereas, in Houston, wearing a mask all the time. You go in the store, and at that point, maybe half and half, mask, no mask. But, if you go to a store and the only person wearing a mask is the cashier and none of the other customers wearing a mask and you wearing a mask, there's sort of a peer pressure of like, why am I wearing a mask? What's wrong with me? But if everybody's wearing masks, it's kind of the reverse, right? If you see everybody wearing a mask, you're going to be more likely to wear one, feel better about wearing it, whatever. So, I think we're getting a little bit of help in that regard. But really, the sad thing is viruses are very, very simple. They're really, by many definitions, not even alive. They are completely dependent upon other living cells, other living organisms to reproduce and spread. And so they're entirely dependent on us and our behavior. Without us getting infected, going and infecting other people, viruses they're not magical. They can't do that on their own. They're dependent on the host to basically get sick and spread it. So to get out of the situation we're in now, the only way we can do that, and I think governmental orders can be helpful in enforcing certain kinds of human behavior, but ultimately it's down to sort of our behavior and do we take it seriously? Do we do the things we need to do? And do we, stay home on 4th of July, or do we go to the crowded beach with a bunch of folks? And
I've seen Jaws, man. I know how this ends up.
Exactly.
One of the things we can't escape from all of this, and I'm not going to ask you any direct political questions because of your position, but politics is part of it. And the mask has been politicized. So straight up for people, how effective is it if I'm wearing a face mask, a bandana? I bought into this and bought about 12, I've got my Def Leppard one on the way. How effective is a mask really and truly for preventing the virus?
Right. So there've been different studies on masks, and there's there's some variation in the type of material that's used, how tightly woven it is. If you're talking, especially in cloth masks that people are making themselves, versus surgical masks like I've got one here, versus an N95 style mask like I have here. They all have sort of different levels of effectiveness, but the key point is that they're all much, much better at blocking respiratory droplets than nothing at all. And so the key benefit of the mask is it's going to help if you are infected and you don't know it. Quite a few people are infected and have little to no symptoms. It's going to help prevent you from spreading your respiratory droplets out of your mouth, onto surfaces, onto your hands, or then you touch things or touch people, or, hopefully people aren't shaking hands anymore, but, those sorts of behaviors. If you're coughing, it's just going to be effective at helping to reduce those respiratory droplets, to reduce the chance of transmission. And then the other part of that is it may help prevent you from either inhaling respiratory droplets if you're somewhere where someone coughs, right in front of you or right around you, or it's also going to keep you from touching your own face and mouth. So if you touch a surface that's contaminated, you're not going to put your fingers to your mouth and then ingest the virus or inhale it that way. So, it's all better than nothing. Even the cloth mat, bandana, whatever you've got is better than nothing. I'm a big fan. I'll be honest. I'm a big fan of the disposable surgical mask. Not an N95, but N95 is getting comfortable over time, and we need them in healthcare. But I think disposable surgical masks are pretty common now, commonly available. I find they're lighter weight and more comfortable for me than the cloth masks. Honestly, I'm also used to wearing them from work. But just I think the most important thing is to find something you can wear to cover your face that you'll wear, that you like, it's comfortable for you. Those are really the key points. And it's one of the best things we can do to block those respiratory droplets. Because even when, we know respiratory droplets, one of the main ways when you're sick, you cough and you eject a lot of droplets. But we also now know from, more studies have been done that if you're talking really animatedly, if you're talking loudly or shouting, you tend to produce more respiratory droplets to get ejected. If you're singing in a choir, you're actually ejecting a ton of respiratory droplets. Hopefully choirs are not practicing right now. But, early on there was a choir, it was all over the news, this one choir where they went and 2/3 of the choir got infected after this one practice. So anyway, it's just good at blocking those respiratory droplets and helping prevent you from ingesting them or inhaling them. But mainly it's one of those things too. Mainly it's really good at helping prevent you from accidentally transmitting it if you don't know you're sick.
And if we all wear one, then we're not transmitting to anyone.
Right, exactly.
Directly.
Which really help block transmission when you're out of
the other political side of this, again, I don't necessarily want you to weigh in, but the reality is, as the virus becomes more divisive, things like government help with unemployment is going to start to dry up, right? The idea of people being able to self-isolate as much as possible is going to become a little bit harder just on the survival area, or just for survivability. If we have to be out, what are some ways that we can protect ourselves? Masks, hand sanitizer, staying apart. I mean, is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I think, a lot of the, absolutely. I do think, some of the best sort of adherence to practices I've seen in the community have been employees at certain grocery stores and stuff where they've erected plexiglass barriers. All the employees are wearing masks. They have ample hand sanitizer available. They're sanitizing the cart for you when you walk in, offering you hand sanitizer when you walk into the store. Those are great. Those are good things. So I would support businesses that are doing those sorts of things. I went out to dinner for Father's Day, kind of last minute, went really early, so it wasn't crowded. And actually the restaurant we went to was following all the rules, operating at low capacity. Everybody was wearing masks. They actually checked my family's temperature when we entered the restaurant, which I appreciated, because then I knew they were doing that to everybody else that was in the restaurant and had been, so that's cool. So I think you have to find those places that are really following the rules and going the extra mile to try to protect not just their employees, but protect you as a customer and support those businesses. And then when you yourself are going out for whatever you're going out for, wear the mask, bring the hand sanitizer in case you can't get to a sink to wash your hands for whatever reason. And, avoid crowded places. If you go someplace and it is crowded, if you walk through the door and it's crowded, I think it was the mayor of Houston said yesterday or something, if you go somewhere and it's crowded, turn around and walk out. Like if you can, just try to avoid it if at all possible. And just try to kind of plan ahead and minimize those trips so that you're not going to 3 different stores for groceries or, those sorts of things. So it's sort of those are all numerous things that we can do, and just being, really trying to avoid big crowds, large crowds, parties, things that are optional. Because as the infection rate increases in the community, it's just, the more infected people there are in a community, the smaller the gathering size gets where you're still likely to be infected, right? So if 1 in 100 people, 2 in 100 people, you get like 1 in 50 people, 1 in 40 people, it's like that circle of, possible infection, that number of people gets smaller and smaller. So in terms of exposure risk. So you just have to really, really be cognizant of that. And it's, you're traveling, it's tough. I would even say you leave the bathroom before you leave the house to try to avoid the fact that you're going to go to like the gas station and go, oh, I need to use the gas station bathroom, or
right.
Something like that, just to try to plan ahead when you can for those sorts of things. You
are a proud graduate of the University of Texas. Are we going to get any form of college football this year, even with or without fans?
I really hope so. But I'm a whole lot less. I'm feeling definitely less good about that as the days go by. I was more optimistic back in March, and then I was feeling pretty optimistic in May, and now I'm struggling with it because it's going to be hard. I definitely think colleges are going to restart either with a hybrid model or in person in the beginning, because I think that's a prerequisite, right? You got to have kids there to have student athletes there, and then but beyond that, it's tricky because and again, most young healthy people do well with COVID, but not all. So what's the acceptable risk? If you do have an athlete who has a complicated course, so it's really tricky, and it's just going to be interesting to see how this current wave sort of goes and what the trajectory of it is, and if it has, because I really honestly expected this to be happening more in like October or September, what we're seeing right now. So the fact that we're seeing it right now makes it very hard for me to predict sort of the shape of this curve and where it's going to be, and what's going to happen in the fall when we have our regular flu season and everything else. So I would like to think it's going to happen. Again, I don't know about fans, but it's going to require, the schools are going to have to be, they're going to have to be testing the athletes before the games and quarantining them. And the travel stuff. Yeah. It's going to be really hard. So I don't know if it'll be an abbreviated schedule. I think, it's one of those things, there's so much money tied up in it that I think there's a lot of interest in doing it. And I think there's a lot of national love for it and love for the game. And I think a lot of the athletes love the game. At the same time, there's so much potential liability that kind of counterbalances. Yeah. And it's just hard to predict with the unpredictability of this virus to some extent, and the unpredictability of sort of human behavior and where things go. So I'm really hopeful because, man, I miss it as much as everybody else. But I don't know at this point. At this point, I'd say it's a toss-up.
We are here on the second edition of the new segment, the Minor League Mind, with Jess Knaster. Jess, I wish we could be talking about better news, but what we all kind of knew is now official. How you doing, man?
Good, thanks, James. I think among the minor league baseball world, people either familiarized with it or currently working in it knew that the news of yesterday of June 30th was coming, that the season was going to be canceled. You put together the fact that all the teams weren't going to be able to have, or most teams weren't going to have their full rosters because there were going to be the 60-man squads, as many as 60-man squads up in the majors. Major league teams already staking claims to putting taxi squads in minor league ballparks. You put 2 and 2 together there. But then also, I think the biggest thing is, major pro sports around the world can play in empty stadiums because they make the majority of their money. They make a lot of money on in-person interaction too. They make most of their money on advertising from television and radio and internet. And so you can still watch games on TV and get a pretty similar experience to what it would be like to be at a Major League Baseball game, because the experience is, see, look, we have the best baseball players in the world. Minor League Baseball, we can't operate without fans because we are about the fans. It is about making sure the fans have a good time, and that's really where it's different. So I think, most minor league people, if not all minor league people, knew it was coming. Maybe not that it was coming yesterday, but it's news that we've had to reckon with for a while. And, it's not necessarily made any easier by it actually coming to fruition. But at least now the thought can be, because it's just how minor league baseball works, 2021, opening day 2021, start thinking about April, start thinking about how things can be different, how things will have to be different, and start getting ready to start the engines back up again.
Okay, so I want to take this from 2 angles. We did discuss, we had Jeff Lantz on the show today, and he painted a pretty, I guess the picture that's accurate, that there are going to be some teams that are just not going to survive this. And I've spoken with a couple of presidents of minor league teams who talked about the fact that even though some of them were able to pivot better than others, they still had to do a lot of layoffs. Maybe paint a picture for people, exactly the types of people that are working for minor league teams. I think we can all talk about it in the macro, but these are small businesses that are in sometimes people's first jobs. They are people's first time doing anything. What is the makeup of a minor league staff, I guess?
Well, I think, first and foremost, you have your front offices, and your front offices are made up of more career type people, some of which are fresh out of college. It's their first full-time job out of college, maybe an internship with another team prior, or with the same team that they're now full-time with. But it could be, probably their first or second job, a couple years removed from college. And so they're still trying to find their footing in the world. There's plenty of people who are lifers in minor league baseball within a front office, specifically, who, like the Jethawks, for example, the Lancaster Jethawks. We have a guy who's been the facilities manager since the inception of the Jethawks in 1996. So he's been around forever. And there are plenty of for everyone like him, there are plenty of guys around minor league baseball who that could have been their first job, and they just never left. They liked the new community, or it was their community, and they didn't want to leave. So that's kind of a front office where you have a mishmash, and then you have plenty of people within a front office who are looking to move up over time, but for the time being, they're looking to get a footing in the pro sports world. You have interns who are maybe still in college who are looking to get that full-time job eventually in minor league baseball. And, those are people who are no longer able to get real-world sports experience this year, because it's really, if you're doing sales or whatever it may be at a minor league level, it really is only minor league in name only. In sales, you're still talking to clients, You're still doing everything you would be at the major league level. It's just maybe a slightly smaller scale, but you're still being asked to do a lot. And then you have, I think, the real, the most heartbreaking part of all of this is from the staff angle, is the community. And you have plenty of people who are, maybe it's their first job ever, talking high schoolers or people who just never worked before. So they'll come out, they'll be ticket takers, they'll be concessionaires, they'll work in the souvenir store, they might be the mascot, they might do, some of the all sorts of game day stuff, having had no experience working in baseball or sports or experience working at all. And then you have the flip side of it. You have plenty of people who maybe have retired, and it might be one of the last jobs they want to have before they finish working altogether. And it's just something to do in the summertime. It's not for the money. It's just to get out of the house and to be around baseball, be around families who are there to have fun, who want to have fun, and help be a part of that. And then the in-between, obviously, people who are collecting an extra paycheck because their first job isn't good enough, so they have a second job so that they can help provide more for their family. So there really is, I think, all walks of life represented in a minor league front office. It's a little bit more spread out maybe than just aiming at one group of people in one place, unless you just say the whole organization represents really the community, because you have the career people and the people who are just looking for a summer job, and then everywhere in between.
I think that's the thing that's the most devastating. So, you've now worked for, if I'm counting correctly, 4 organizations. Is that correct? Quad Cities, Midland, San Jose, and Lancaster.
Four affiliated organizations and a Collegiate Summer League team.
My research department is going to get fired. We are getting rid of those guys.
So yes, for an affiliated baseball, we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. So you relatively have a finger on a pulse on what a lot of these communities look like, feel like. Midland and San Jose, probably 2 of your bigger towns that you were in. I know to call Midland a big town is probably, but it's not small. I mean, it's a mid-sized city. How long do you think it's going to take some of these towns to recover? Some of these teams?
Well, I think, it really depends first and foremost on what next year looks like, both from a financial standpoint. If there's any sort of Major League Baseball, I don't want to say help because it doesn't seem like that's what it's going to be, but if there's any Major League Baseball money coming into minor league teams to kind of help jumpstart things again, because there are some communities that just minor league baseball organizations are like a pendulum. If the pendulum stops swinging, it takes a lot to get it going again. It can't just start up on its own. It needs a push. And so I think if teams can operate as normal, you'll find it could be relatively quickly that orgs are able to get back on their feet. But then there's also the whole pandemic thing that's still going on, and who knows how long it's going to be going on for. And it could very well affect how the operating or the standard operating procedure can be for minor league teams, if they can fill a ballpark 100%, if they can put people on the berm, if they have to keep people off the berm, if they're going every other section or every other row. I mean, money in minor league baseball, money earned allows there to be money spent. And if there's not money earned, there can't be money spent. So, a place like San Jose might recover a little bit sooner just because there's more people there, and more people means more opportunities to get people out to the ballpark. And I think that's probably what is going to be the biggest determining factor with a lot of organizations, is what their community makeup is in terms of size.
Let's put
if there's more people around, there's more people to come out.
Let's put your far-seeing. I was trying to remember the character Johnny Carson played when he would Karnak. Your Karnak hat on.
With the envelope, yeah.
With the envelope. So, the thing that you and I have been discussing, I think, since October, has been this threat of contraction. And do you foresee? And I'll give some background without naming names. I've spoken to some presidents of teams who are affiliated but not owned by their major league partners. And one guy said he had heard from his major league parent team 3 times since this started, all on phone calls he made. Contrast that with some of the teams that were contracted, or on the contraction list that leaked, were attempted to have been bought by a team already. And then they were turned down, and they all of a sudden ended up on a list, therefore devaluing their franchise. Yes, I'm getting pretty tinfoil hat on this. Do you see that being – you talked about infusing money. Do you see an attempt by these big teams to start buying up some more of these minor league squads to infuse with money and therefore take ownership of the team?
Well, I think what Pat O'Connor said yesterday, going back to the original question or the first question of the news and did we see it coming and all sorts of that. I think the thing that shocked me personally the most was just how heavily affected so many teams in minor league baseball could be. Pat O'Connor saying yesterday that more than north of 50% of the teams might not be financially solvent, depending on government or governmental help and then major league help. So that'll play a part. But I think potentially we may find ourselves in a spot where Major League Baseball wants 4 affiliates per team, and that means 120 teams. And if there are more than 42 teams, even list not included, if there are more than 40 teams or 40 or 42 teams who are not financially solvent, the list doesn't matter anymore. And then it becomes, can Major League Baseball even get themselves to 120 minor league teams for 4 affiliates per organization? And I think if that is the case, you'll see more major league teams trying to scoop up minor league organizations because they want to be able to have minor league baseball for the player development side. And I think they may not necessarily see the value, and then maybe they do see the value in what major league team or what minor league baseball can provide to Major League Baseball, and it's grooming fans, grooming players, and getting people interested in the game. But no, I think that's going to be a determining factor, is how many teams really need financial help, because I think Major League Baseball wants to make money anywhere they can. I mean, I think everybody wants to make money anywhere they can, but Major League Baseball, it seems like, has shown a little bit less of a they seem to be a little bit more brave in going after what they want. Let's say it that way.
And I think it's fair to paint the picture too for people that a lot of these businesses, these teams are small businesses and they're owned by families. These are not, the guy that owns the Astros owns restaurants and sanitation companies, and the Astros is a thing they own. In many of these cases, these are what they hope to be their retirements, their and I know it's still richer problems than what you and I have, but we're not talking about billionaires that own these teams.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 160 owners in full season baseball, 120 owners in full season minor league baseball, and then all the short season teams. And there are some teams or some organizations that are owned by an ownership group that have 4 or 5. But for the most part, it's one ownership group per team. And in a lot of cases, these ownership groups are people who spent money on a minor league team, and then the money that they continue to spend on that team is directly correlated to what they make. Yeah. And I think that's so unique among pro sports in this country, where you do have the affiliations for some minor league teams, but there are some minor league teams that are, somebody had a few $1 million, so they bought a minor league team, but if they stop making money on that team, they can't afford it anymore. And I think that is hard to grasp with how much money exists in pro sports at the top level, that there could be any sort of pro sports that aren't like that. And so, the idea that a minor league baseball team, even a double or a triple A team, that they're a small business doesn't really seem to make sense. But it really is a mom and pop organization or mom and pop operation, sometimes quite literally. There was a team in the California League who was bought in the offseason last year by a husband and wife, and their son works for the organization. So,
there it is. All right, Jess, we'll have you on in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll have some at least some information on contraction. Until then, you guys stay safe. Give our love to Lindsay and to Bambi.
The newest addition to the family. Major League Baseball may be on its way. Minor League Baseball may not be coming, but dogs are always good.
And welcome to our very first segment for Show Me the Merch. This is replacing the Unbox show that we had. We wanted to kind of adapt it a little bit now that this is not just a podcast, not just a web series. We're kind of doing both things at one time because we find that people consume the show differently. And I've been very excited with the numbers, and I wanted to make sure that we're appealing to everyone. So now we are going to show you the merch. And we were at the Brazos Valley Bombers just this past week on Tuesday night, and it was my first Collegiate Summer League game. And the Bombers had always intrigued me because I love that logo is great. I'll put it up on the screen here. The logo is fantastic, and they were, the first time out, and I walked in and I was walked immediately to the pro shop to buy some stuff. It's sort of a booth, and wanted to buy a jersey. They don't have them on sale yet. I think they have them on the web, so I'm going to get a couple, but really loved what we got. So I really love just the trucker hat with one of my favorite logos in baseball, period. And then I got myself a very, very cool looking, comfortable t-shirt. And then my wife, Jessica, had to work. She was unable to make the game. So of course, I had to make sure she got hooked up as well. So she got the gold. So all in all, really cool looks. And I can't wait to get more gear with all of this logo on it. And we'll definitely be back to the Brazos Valley Bombers.
From the bleachers, the Let's Get To Game of the Week.
And we're back here on From the Bleachers. And again, we were out at the Brazos Valley Bombers. So I'm going to go ahead and give you all a view of the hat hair that's going on as I slide on my brand new Bombers cap for the segment. Like I said, it was my first Collegiate Summer League game, and it was, I'll be honest, a lot of fun. And one, I was impressed by the athletes, and I guess I shouldn't have been, but I mean, because these are all Division I college players, which means they're good at baseball. And it was interesting to watch them. They're a little rusty, so there were some plays that maybe weren't made that I would suspect would have been made had they had a full workout period, or will be made, a week from now. But the hustle, how hard they played, it was overall a great experience. I love the ballpark, and I think that I'm just somebody who loves ballparks because sometimes I like them when they're super ornate and new and modern. I'm thinking of the Durham Bulls facility, but there was something about grandstands and then seats up the side and then places for kids to play, something that felt much more casual and intimate. The thing that struck me was sitting right next to the Round Rock Harryman bullpen and listening to the pitchers talk about what the mound was like, because I'm that close. And that's not a proximity you get with any other level of baseball, particularly matched with this high level of competition that we had. I was, first of all, your standard hot dog size, Brazos Valley. I'm a fat guy who enjoys a good hot dog. I was just very impressed. Love the in-game entertainment. Like nothing was no expense was spared. And the gentleman that was running the in between inning entertainment, you couldn't tell if he was playing to 4 people or 3,000. His energy level was high. He was doing a great job. He was making everyone feel like they were at home. The chicken dance thing was fantastic. I think the thing that struck me the most when I showed up to the ballpark were 2 things. One, I appreciated how well everyone, both employees and patrons, took the social distancing, that just about everybody had a mask on, that the seating, even though it was general admission for a lot of it, at least the tickets I got, people were respecting it, and it looked like the numbers were perfectly safe, and there was plenty of signage and plenty of hand sanitizer, all those things. The other thing that really kind of really just put a smile on my face was just how friendly the staff was. So, and they looked all to be either high school kids or college kids. I'm assuming first jobs kind of thing. I assume a lot of them probably go to A&M. But having, even as I'm walking, people ask me how I'm doing. Am I having a good time? Something that struck me when I paid for my hot dogs. Thanks for supporting both teams. And I don't know if that's standard operating procedure or if it's just the woman behind the counter recognizing we're all in a weird spot and it's just good for these kids to be playing. I don't know what it is, but I will tell you what it felt like for somebody who drove from Austin 2 hours to go to the game. It felt warm and it felt welcoming. And it felt like, as we continue to watch people's behavior, particularly like social media stuff, completely just go down the toilet, it meant the world to me to feel legitimately welcomed, to feel like my dollar, which wasn't very much, because I think with 2 shirts and a hat and the food, I maybe spent $40, if that much. I felt welcomed. But the other thing that I will go right to the video on site to show you. Sometimes you wait a whole lifetime for something, and then it finally happens. And yes, I outjumped a kid, and no, I didn't give it to him. He learned a hard, valuable lesson about life. I over-exaggerate. I didn't actually run over a kid, but my very first ever baseball. I'll get this puppy in a case. Never before have I caught a foul ball, and it was very special. But Brazos Valley, you have a fan in me. I will be buying more stuff, and as I was telling the young lady that was selling jerseys and stuff, I will put in a bid for that Star Wars jersey. You just got to name a price.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So as we wrap it up, we do want to have a little bit of fun. And, it was sad and yet inspiring to see all of these different teams react to this news in very different ways. And one of the things that caught our eye was that the Peoria Cheifs called dibs on their Midwest League championship. And it got me thinking that maybe I'm just going to decide who the Let's Get To champion is of each of these individual leagues as we kind of work through the rest of the summer. We're going to try to come up with some kind of gift or some kind of prize for those teams. And so first and foremost, Peoria Cheifs, you are one of my favorite brands in minor league baseball. And we confirm your dibs. You called dibs first. I saw some other people trying to snatch it from you. No way, man. No way. And so we're also going to go ahead and look at the South Atlantic League. And we have decided that, presto changeo, we will be declaring the Greensboro Grasshoppers champions of the South Atlantic League in the Let's Get To simulation. And by simulation, I move the mouse real fast. And because it's my show, it is my show, I'm going to go ahead and declare that the Corpus Christi Hooks have won the Texas League. And look, I've got really good friends that are front office members of this particular league. I'm sorry, but the Corpus Christi Hooks have won the Texas League according to the Let's Get To simulation. And because I am a homer that does nothing but homer all day, we'd like to congratulate the Round Rock Express for winning the Pacific Coast League in the Let's Get To Heart simulation. So that is our show. We are going to be heading out to Normal, Illinois to check out the Colonel League this weekend. So we'll be back next week with some cool video and some anecdotes from that. So until next time, the year's half over. It's July 1st when we record this, July 2nd when we release it. We're halfway through 2020, and I just feel like it's going to get better. So do your best to stay safe, stay sane, and until next time, let's get to.